super excited about the future. Sam Bankman-Fried and myself and our teams, some of you were there. We did a conference in the Bahamas last year, as well as the SALT conference. We're going to be doing a conference in Singapore in November and a conference in the UAE in Abu Dhabi in March of this coming year. And of course, there'll be Crypto Bahamas next year. But in the course of getting to know each other and our teams sort of combining, we announced last week that Sam, through FTX Ventures, has bought a 30% stake in SkyBridge Capital. So we're completely thrilled by that. Unfortunately, Sam couldn't be here live, but I've invited him in, and we're going to just spend a few minutes talking about our deal and some of the things that we're working on. And there's Sam, okay? And I used to have hair like that. I just want everybody to know that, okay? My hair looked a lot like that when I was 30 years old. But Sam, welcome to the SALT conference. I know you've got a lot of things going on today, but I wanted to take a few moments and have you address our delegates here. Of course, SALT is sponsored by FTX. FTX is the principal sponsor for the brand, and now a 30% owner. But Sam, tell us a little bit about your thoughts for the future. What are you thinking about as you're putting things together for FTX?
Well, thanks for having me, and super excited to be talking, here, and more so to be working with you guys. It's been really amazing doing so over the last year. And I went to SALT about a year ago in New York. It was one of the best run conferences I've been at, despite the shit show of trying to do this at the height of COVID in the middle of New York City, bringing thousands of people together. So I'm looking forward. Obviously, a lot of us are just staring at what the Fed's going to do every day, trying to figure out which way interest rates are going, which way markets are going. But I think more generally, as far as we can tell, the sort of acute choppiness has subsided, and we're in a position where I think that the future is what we make of it, sort of as as an industry and more generally. And so I'm super excited to see what comes, and I'm super excited to work together and to charge forward generally.
Sam, when you think about the next 3 or 4 years for the cryptocurrency markets, the broader markets, and FTX, and I've heard you say this on the air and on podcasts, you see your vision for FTX expands beyond the cryptocurrency universe. Is that fair to say? Why don't you elucidate for people here what you're thinking about in terms of the FTX vision?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the kind of startling things for us, at least for me, was after having gotten into crypto and started trading it and then moving to building an exchange, I sort of went back and experienced TradFi from a different lens, from the lens of not sitting behind a company that has spent 20 years and thousands of people and billions of dollars building up infrastructure. I was at Jane Street Capital before I got into crypto, and I tried to open my own brokerage account. I tried to trade a share of Amazon, trade an S&P 500 future, and send money from my bank account into a brokerage account to do so. And it was an unbelievable nightmare. It was so horrific. I feel almost sort of uncomfortable talking about how it sort of feels like something has to have been illegal about how that happened. Of course, it wasn't. It's just the realities of market structure today, that it came about somewhat accidentally. It doesn't work the way that people would build it today if they were rebuilding market structure. It is a total mess. And I think what that sort of underscored was, we can do better than that. And I think that made us super motivated to try and figure out, well, how can we start to build out, market structure, not just in crypto, but outside of crypto. In fact, how can we leverage a lot of what we've been doing with blockchain, try and build out, hopefully, market structure that works better for everyone across a bunch of different asset classes.
Sam, when you talk about stock trading as an example, I think you once used this example that there's probably 6 or 7 entities that a stock has to pass through before it goes from the buyer to the seller. But over the blockchain, we can probably just have a peer-to-peer transfer. Is that fair to say? And if you think that that's possible, when do you think that would be possible?
I mean, I think it, in theory, is possible. Technologically, it is possible. In fact, it's possible today technologically. The biggest piece of this is figuring out what the right regulatory structure is for that. When you think about, when you think about clearing from the perspective of equities, exactly as you said, there are an enormous number of entities involved in the transfer of a stock between the various stock clearing firms, the DTCC, the brokers, the PFOF firms, the dark pools, the exchanges, the customers, and each one of those is a pain point. Each one of those adds noise, adds complexity, and it adds risk. And you can look at what happens on, what happened the day that meme stocks went crazy, a few years ago, and basically all the brokers had to shut down because of the settlement risk in the system. You look at what is the equivalent of that in digital assets, and you just send a blockchain transfer, and 5 minutes later, in many blockchains, 5 seconds later, you're done. Like, that has fully settled, and you can sort of move on to step 2 of this. And so that's just like an enormous difference. And in theory means that there is huge advantage to using blockchain rails to settle things. It means that as you said, like stock transactions, seconds later can have fully settled. You don't have T+2 days, you have T+2 seconds. You don't have settlement risk hanging over that entire time. So I do think that there are huge theoretical advantages to it. And then what it takes to get from here to there, the big build out there is regulatory. Like internationally, we've built out a lot of the infrastructure for this. And a lot of what we've been thinking about is how do you do that in a UX context?
You're talking about regulatory infrastructure. I know from your colleague, Sam, that you do have one suit at least, and it's somewhere stored in Washington, so that when you have to go to the Hill, you put the suit on.
That's right.
So we know that about, at least there's one suit out there. But tell us about that experience in Washington. Tell us about where you think the regulatory rubric for the industry is going, and the nuanced differences between the SEC, the CFT, et cetera.
Yeah, it's my suit is, I left it on my brother's couch when I left DC last week. Coming back next week, and I'll pick it up there. It's been, a lot of things, but frankly, a big part of it has actually been a little bit heartening. I've been sort of pleasantly surprised by the extent to which a lot of people in DC are honestly just trying to figure out how they can do the right thing. And it's a really tough environment, obviously. There's an enormous amount of noise, of commotion going on. It's not an easy place to just straightforwardly do good in, but I do think that a lot of people are trying there, and I do really respect that. And think that that's incredibly important. And it means that I think there's a lot of hope to get great things done there. Even if it's also a lot of work. I've been going there, probably every 2 or 3 weeks for the last year, working on, how do you build out a regulatory framework for cryptocurrencies? And, the biggest things have been, talking with lawmakers about what the important customer protections are, or, should be that do not exist today. And what's necessary to bring, volume and liquidity onshore to give clarity, for the industry. And, the single biggest thing is some way, somehow, however it happens, there has to be reasonable federal oversight of the industry. There has to be an agency or multiple agencies that are in charge of, of policing the space. And so that's the biggest piece of this. And, the SEC and CFTC are sort of the two natural places to do that. They're both going to have some role in doing it one way or another. I don't think we're going to end up in a world in which either of them is irrelevant to this conversation. And so I think it's a question of, okay, so then how do you actually make that happen? And, we've been applying with both agencies for licensure, optimistic that that we will find a way to get licensed, for cryptocurrency products. We've been working, with Congress to, draft legislation that would codify that there is licensure, for these assets. And, I'm actually surprisingly optimistic that that will actually happen. That, a year from now, there will have been a bill for a framework for digital assets. I was not thinking that was a real possibility going into this on that time scale, but I think it is. And a lot of that's just been saying, look, we want oversight, we want to be regulated. Here are the important parts of the industry. Here are the things to look out for, and then working with the agencies and with, and with Congress to codify that.
Sam, before I let you go, I have one last question. I want you to, I know you get this question a lot, but I want you to say it for our delegates. There is a spirit of pessimism, as you know, and I know, in bear markets, and there's a lot of bear market naysayers related to the cryptocurrency industry and the future of cryptocurrency. What would your response be to those naysayers and the bears?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I want to be cautious to give, about giving investment advice here. But I think what I'd say is everything's down this year. And the reason everything's down this year is really that dollars are up this year. Really the core thing that happened was interest rates increased. Inflation has been with us in one form or another for a long time. This, I think, is the year that, policy change to start decreasing inflation, specifically decreasing asset price inflation by increasing the value of the dollar. That led to a decrease in the value of risk assets. And that happens. But that doesn't change the underlying. That changes the monetary status for now. But monetary status can change again, and anything more importantly, that doesn't change the fact that I think blockchain has huge use cases in terms of financial settlement, in terms of payments, in terms of on-chain social media, and a ton of other things. It's going to take time for those to get to scale, but people are working on it. And I think that it doesn't change the fact that regulatory clarity, I think, is coming in the space. I think that's going to be huge. I think it's going to unlock the asset class for a number of institutions that have been looking for a way to get in, but have been sort of confused and nervous about doing it without clear federal oversight. So I think both those things are really exciting, and optimistic that they're going to make for a much stronger market over the next few years.
Well, Sam, thanks for beaming in today. We greatly appreciate it. I know you got a big week this week. I'm encouraging people to stop at the FTX Pavilion here. We set up this Formula One racetrack, Sam, which is pretty cool, which is alongside of your sponsorship with Formula One. And of course, when I showed it to my kids, they were like, Dad, we want to come to the SAL conference, but they're in school right now, so too bad for them. But I encourage you guys to please go over there. And Sam, thank you. Appreciate you being here. Ladies and gentlemen, Sam Bankman-Fried. Thanks, Sam.
Thank
See you.
you.